"Take my children," the starving widow said. The rich rancher answered, "I'll take you too." The cold winter wind swept across the prairie like a whip, cutting through Martha's thin shawl and chilling her to the bone. Snow crunched under her worn boots as she trudged along the frozen path, her 3 children clinging tightly to her skirts. Each step was a struggle, the icy ground making her ankles ache, but she forced herself forward. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and she could see the same desperation in her children's pale faces. Her youngest, little Emily, only 3 years old, whimpered softly, shivering in the thin coat her late husband had once worn. Martha pulled her closer, wrapping her arms around all 3, trying to offer warmth she barely had herself. Their small cabin, now silent and empty, had been their world, but without her husband, it was no longer safe. The food they had stored was long gone, eaten bit by bit in moments of quiet despair. Each morning had become a battle against hunger, and each night a battle against fear. Martha had done her best, but she knew there was only so much one person could do. The farm was barren. The winter had been cruel, and the little money they had saved was spent on firewood and a single sack of flour that had not lasted more than a week. She had watched her children grow weaker, their laughter fading into quiet whimpers of exhaustion and hunger. As she walked across the endless fields, she remembered the days when the prairie had seemed so full of life. She remembered the tall grasses swaying in the summer breeze, the birds singing in the morning sun, and the laughter of her husband teaching the boys how to ride their first horses. But now the world was quiet. The snow covered every trace of color, leaving only white and gray, and the prairie seemed endless and lonely. Martha felt the weight of hopelessness pressing on her heart, yet she could not give in. She could not. Her children depended on her, and she had promised herself that she would do everything to keep them safe. Her mind wandered as she trudged through the snow, thinking of the few people in town who might help her. She knew some of the neighbors had been kind, giving her scraps of food or letting her trade small chores for flour, but most were struggling themselves. The town was small, and the winter had been harsh. Everyone was trying to survive. She knew it was not their fault, but it did nothing to ease the ache of her hunger and worry. The children, sensing her anxiety, huddled closer. Samuel, her eldest, only 9, tried to appear brave, telling his siblings stories to keep their spirits up. "I saw a fox today," he whispered, "and it ran faster than the wind. Maybe we can be like that fox and run to a better place." His attempt to smile was heartbreaking, and Martha's heart ached for him. She wanted to tell him not to worry, but the truth was, she was just as scared as he was. By late morning, Martha finally reached the edge of the town. The buildings looked worn and weathered from the cold, and smoke curled lazily from chimneys, promising warmth that she and her children had not felt in days. She held her children's hands tightly, guiding them between the buildings, careful not to stumble on the icy streets. People passed by, wrapped in heavy coats, carrying baskets or leading horses. Some looked at her with curiosity, some with sympathy, and some simply looked away, lost in their own struggles. Martha's heart beat fast as she approached the largest building on the main street. It was the ranch of Charles Whitmore, the richest man in the county. The building was massive, with wooden walls polished by years of care, and smoke rising from a large chimney promising warmth and food inside. She had heard stories of Mr. Whitmore's generosity, and also of his sternness. People said he was not a man to waste words on the weak, but she had no choice. She could not feed her children anymore. She had to ask for help, even if it meant risking rejection. The thought of asking someone to take her children, to take them away from her, filled Martha with dread. Every mother fears the thought of being separated from her children, and she was no different. Yet she knew that if she did not try, they might not survive the week. Her hand shook as she knocked on the heavy wooden door. Each knock echoed in the cold air, and her children stared at her, their small faces full of trust and fear at the same time. The door opened slowly, revealing a tall man with sharp features and a serious expression. This was Charles Whitmore. His eyes studied her carefully, taking in her tattered clothes, the children clinging to her skirts, and the exhaustion etched on her face. He did not speak immediately, and the silence felt heavy. Martha took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "Sir," she began, "please, my children, we have no food, no place to stay. I beg you, if you can, take my children and keep them safe. I cannot feed them, and I fear they will not survive the winter." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and Emily's small hands gripped hers tightly. Samuel and the middle child, Anna, stood silently, their eyes wide and full of hope and fear. Martha felt a lump in her throat, a mixture of shame and desperation. She had never begged for anything in her life, but this was not about pride. It was about survival. Charles Whitmore looked at her quietly. The ranch hands behind him whispered among themselves, unsure how their master would respond. Martha waited, every second stretching into eternity. The cold seemed to press against her, and the children's shivering made her heart ache even more. She could barely stand on her own feet from exhaustion and hunger, but she forced herself to remain upright, hoping for mercy. Finally, Charles spoke, his voice deep and calm. "Bring them inside." Relief washed over her in a wave she had not felt in days. She gathered her children closer and followed him into the warmth of the ranch. Inside, the smell of fresh bread and roasting meat filled the air, making her stomach rumble. The children's eyes widened at the sight of the large kitchen and the fire crackling in the hearth. For the first time in days, they smiled, small but genuine, and Martha felt tears of gratitude blur her vision. As they sat by the fire wrapped in warm blankets, Martha could hardly believe her luck. She had expected rejection, perhaps even anger, but instead she found kindness. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to rest, even for a moment, and to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this winter together. The children, still quiet but calmer, began to eat the warm bread that Charles's housekeeper had brought. Martha watched them, her heart full of gratitude and relief. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. Survival on the prairie was never simple, but for now she had hope. And hope, she realized, was stronger than fear. Outside, the wind howled across the prairie, and the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. But inside, there was warmth, safety, and a promise of care. Martha held her children close, whispering words of comfort, feeling a small flicker of joy in her heart. They had faced the harshest part of the winter, and they had made it this far. For Martha, this day marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test her strength, her courage, and her faith in humanity. She had stepped into the unknown, asking for help when she had nothing left, and for the first time in weeks, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. The children's laughter, quiet and cautious, filled the room like music, and Martha knew that no matter what happened next, they would face it together. And so, the widow who had walked miles through snow and despair found herself at the doorstep of possibility, where kindness and compassion might just be enough to save them all. Martha's heart still raced as she followed Charles Whitmore into the warmth of the ranch. Every creak of the wooden floors beneath her worn boots echoed her fear, and every flicker of the firelight reminded her of the safety she had longed for. The children stayed close, their small hands gripping hers as if holding on to life itself. They had been walking through cold and hunger for so long that the warmth of the ranch almost seemed unreal. Their eyes widened at the sight of the large rooms, the polished wooden furniture, and the cozy fires burning in every corner. It was like stepping into a world from a storybook, a world so far removed from the harshness of the snow-covered prairie outside. Charles moved silently through the hallway, his boots making soft thuds on the floor. Martha noticed the way the house was organized with care. Everything had a place, and nothing seemed out of order. She felt a pang of envy mixed with awe. The rancher's wealth was obvious, yet it was not flashy or wasteful. It was simple, practical, and strong, much like the man himself. Charles glanced at her briefly, his eyes unreadable. Martha did not know what he was thinking, and the uncertainty made her stomach tighten. She had no idea if he would only give them a warm meal and a place to sleep for one night, or if he would truly help them beyond that. The housekeeper, a kind woman named Mrs. Parovich, Harper entered with a tray of steaming bread and hot milk. The smell made the children's stomachs rumble, and Emily, the youngest, tugged on Martha's sleeve with shy excitement. "Mama, can I?" she whispered. Martha nodded, giving her a small smile. "Yes, my love." The children eagerly ate the warm food, their small hands clutching the bread like treasure. Samuel, usually quiet and careful, almost devoured his portion in a way that made Martha smile through her worry. For the first time in days, the children's laughter, soft and hesitant, filled the room. Charles watched quietly, leaning against the doorway. His expression remained calm, almost stern, but there was something in his eyes, a softness that betrayed the kindness he had shown in letting them in. He had seen many people come to his door asking for help, and most were not as desperate as this woman and her children. There was something different about Martha. He could see the determination in her eyes, the quiet strength that had kept her going despite every hardship. She did not ask for charity lightly. She asked because she had no other choice, and in that he saw a courage he respected. After a few minutes, Charles spoke, his deep voice filling the room. "You have traveled far," he said, looking at Martha, "and I can see that it has not been easy. But you are here now, and you and your children will not go hungry tonight." Martha felt her throat tighten. Relief mixed with gratitude made her eyes water, but she forced herself to remain composed. She nodded, barely able to find words. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. I don't know how to repay you." Charles shook his head slightly. "You do not need to repay me. For now, your only concern should be the children. We will find a way to make sure you all are safe and warm." His words, calm and firm, carried a weight of authority, but also an unexpected comfort. Martha felt a small spark of hope ignite in her chest. Perhaps, after all the hardship, there was a chance for them to survive the winter. Perhaps there was a place where they could be safe, even if only for a while. Mrs. Harper guided Martha and the children to a small guest room near the kitchen. The room was modest, with 3 small beds, clean blankets, and a fire burning in the hearth. Martha helped her children into bed, tucking them in carefully. She traced small circles on Emily's back, whispering soft words to calm her. "It's okay, my love. You are safe now. We will be warm and fed. You do not need to worry." Emily's eyes, tired but trusting, closed slowly, and soon the gentle rhythm of her breathing filled the room. Samuel and Anna lay beside her, their exhaustion finally catching up with them. Martha sat by the fire, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot milk, and allowed herself a moment to breathe. The events of the day, the long walk through the snow, the fear of being turned away, and now the warmth and safety of the ranch, overwhelmed her. She felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and cautious hope. For the first time in weeks, she dared to imagine a future where her children would not go to bed hungry, where they could grow strong and healthy despite the harshness of the prairie winter. While the children slept, Charles returned to the room, closed the door quietly behind him, and stood for a moment, watching Martha. She looked tired beyond measure, yet there was a quiet strength in the way she sat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes reflecting both worry and hope. He admired that strength, and it made him think differently about the people who came to his door. He had always believed that wealth and power were measured by land and cattle, but here, in this small room, he saw a different kind of value, the value of courage, love, and perseverance. "Mrs. Mason," he said gently, using her late husband's surname, "tell me about your journey. How did you come to be here?" Martha hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. But there was something in his voice that made her feel safe, something that told her she could speak honestly without fear of judgment. She took a deep breath and began, recounting the days after her husband had passed, the struggle to keep the fire burning, the empty cupboards, and the long, cold walks to beg for food. She spoke of the children's fear, their hunger, and the quiet moments when she thought she might not be able to go on. Her voice shook at times, but she continued, determined to share the truth. Charles listened quietly, nodding occasionally. He did not interrupt or offer immediate solutions. He simply listened. Martha found the act of speaking aloud to someone who truly heard her to be strangely comforting. For the first time in weeks, she did not feel invisible, as if the hardships she had endured were unnoticed by the world. Here was a man who saw her struggle and acknowledged it without judgment. As she spoke, Charles began to see the depth of her love for her children. It was clear that everything she had done, every step through the snow, every sacrifice she had made, was for their sake. He realized that her strength was not just in surviving the harsh winter, but in protecting and nurturing her children despite her own suffering. It was a strength he could respect and admire, a strength that he knew was rare and precious. After she finished speaking, there was a long silence. Martha wondered if she had spoken too much or too little. She feared that now that he knew the full extent of their need, he might see them as burdens rather than people deserving of help. But Charles did not speak immediately. Instead, he walked slowly to the window and looked out at the snow-covered prairie, lost in thought. Martha watched him, unsure of what he was considering. She felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. Finally, he turned back to her. "You have endured much," he said softly, "and yet you have not given up. That is something few people can do. Your children are fortunate to have a mother like you." His words were sincere, and Martha felt a warmth spread through her heart. It was not just the fire in the room that made her feel comforted. It was the acknowledgement that her struggles were seen, her sacrifices recognized. Martha bowed her head slightly, grateful but still cautious. "Thank you, sir. I only wish I could provide for them myself. I have done everything I can, but it is not enough." Charles walked closer and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Sometimes doing everything you can is enough, and sometimes help comes from places you do not expect. For tonight, you and your children will be safe. We will find a way to help you beyond this evening." Martha felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had been crying quietly for weeks, but these tears were different. They were tears of relief, of hope, of the possibility of a better life. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The children stirred in their sleep, and she bent down to tuck a loose blanket around them. Their small faces, peaceful for the first time in days, filled her heart with a profound sense of purpose. Outside, the wind continued to howl, and the snow drifted silently across the prairie. Inside, the small room was filled with warmth, both from the fire and from the promise of protection. Martha knew that the road ahead would still be difficult. Life on the ranch would not be simple, and she would have to learn quickly to navigate this new world. But for now, she could rest in the knowledge that her children were safe, that their bellies were full, and that someone cared enough to offer help without asking for anything in return. As the night wore on, Martha sat quietly by the fire, thinking about the events of the day. She had taken a step into the unknown, asking for help when she had nothing left, and in doing so, she had found a place of safety and hope. She knew that her journey was far from over, but for the first time in weeks she dared to imagine a future where her children could thrive. The warmth of the fire, the kindness in Charles's eyes, and the laughter of her children, though small, created a fragile but precious sense of security. And in that moment Martha understood that even in the harshest winters there could be moments of light, moments where kindness and courage met, creating hope that could carry a family through the coldest nights. She had walked miles through snow and fear, and now finally she could rest. For tomorrow and the days after were yet to come. Martha awoke the next morning to the soft light of dawn streaming through the small window of the guest room. The snow outside had not stopped, blanketing the prairie in silence and white. Her children were still asleep, their small forms curled under the blankets, faces peaceful and free from worry for the first time in days. Martha took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. Today would be the day she had to face the next step, the step she had been dreading for weeks, asking for more than just a warm meal, for more than just one night of safety. She stepped quietly to the fire, letting her eyes rest on the children. Samuel's hand twitched slightly in sleep, Anna's chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, and Emily's soft breathing was like music to Martha's ears. She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth in her heart that she had not felt in months. Her children were safe, at least for now, and that was a comfort she clung to with all her strength. Downstairs, the aroma of fresh bread, eggs, and warm milk filled the kitchen. Mrs. Harper had prepared a breakfast that seemed almost magical to Martha, simple yet nourishing, and enough to fill empty bellies. As she guided her children to the table, she noticed Charles Whitmore standing nearby, looking out the window at the falling snow. His face was calm yet thoughtful, as if he had been awake long before anyone else, pondering matters that were unseen by the rest of the world. Martha hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to begin. How could she put into words the depth of her need without sounding desperate? How could she ask for something that seemed impossible yet necessary? She watched Charles, noticing the way he moved with quiet confidence, the strength in his posture, and the calm in his voice when he finally turned to speak. "You have done well to bring them here safely," he said. His voice, steady and reassuring, carried across the room. "They are lucky to have you. You have shown courage in the face of hardship, and that courage is rare." Martha's heart tightened. His words were kind, but they also reminded her of the responsibility she carried. These children depended on her entirely, and she had already given all she had to keep them alive. Now she needed more than safety for a single night. She needed a promise of care, a hope that they could survive the winter and the hard months to come. She cleared her throat and spoke, her voice soft but determined. "Sir, I am grateful for everything you have done for us already. You have given my children warmth and food, and I cannot thank you enough. But I am afraid that one night, or even a few days, is not enough. The snow is heavy, the winter is harsh, and I cannot provide for them. I have tried everything, but it is not enough. I don't want to ask for more, but I have no choice." Her words trembled, and she looked down at her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. The firelight flickered across her face, highlighting the worry and fear that had become her constant companions. She felt the weight of the world pressing on her shoulders, and yet she knew she had to speak. If she stayed silent, if she pretended everything would be all right, her children might not survive. Charles remained quiet, letting her speak. He watched her closely, seeing the determination and the exhaustion, the love and the fear that intertwined in her every gesture. He understood, in a way few could, the immense responsibility she carried and the strength it required to continue despite it all. He saw that she was not asking for comfort or luxury, but for survival, for her children's lives. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "You have done everything you can," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And yet I can see that it is not enough. Your children need more than a single night of shelter, and I can provide that. They will have food, warmth, and safety for as long as the winter lasts, and longer if necessary." Martha's eyes widened, a mixture of relief and disbelief flooding her heart. Could it be true? Could this man, this stranger who had the power to turn them away, truly be offering more than just temporary help? She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She had never dreamed of receiving such generosity, and yet here it was, offered freely and without condition. Charles's eyes softened slightly, and he continued, "But there is more. I see the bond you share with your children. It is strong, unbreakable, and I would not want to separate you from them. If you are willing, I will also offer you a place here, where you can stay and work, and where your children will always have food and care. You will not have to struggle alone anymore." Martha felt her heart skip a beat. Well, she had expected to plead for her children alone, to sacrifice her own comfort for their safety. But now he was offering not only to take them in, but to take her as well. The enormity of the offer overwhelmed her. Relief, gratitude, and a sense of disbelief mingled together, making it difficult to breathe. She had never imagined that such kindness could exist, and yet here it was, as real as the fire warming her hands. Tears sprang to her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly, not wanting her children to see her cry. She glanced down at them as they finished their breakfast, noticing how their faces lit up with every small gesture of care. Samuel's eyes were bright with curiosity, Anna's cheeks flushed with warmth, and Emily clung to her mother with a newfound sense of security. Martha realized that this offer could change everything. Their lives, their futures, the very possibility of hope in a world that had so often seemed cruel and unforgiving. "Sir," she whispered finally, her voice trembling with emotion, I do not know what to say. This is more than I could have ever hoped for. I cannot thank you enough." "You do not need to thank me. You have done everything in your power to protect and care for your children. It is only right that I help you now. We will figure out the details later, but for tonight, know that you are safe, and so are your children." Martha nodded, her hands still clasped tightly in her lap. She felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief that her children would be safe, and fear of the unknown. Life on the ranch would be different, and she would have to adapt to a world she had never known. She would have to learn the routines, the work, and the expectations of a life far removed from the struggle and simplicity she had always known. Yet the warmth in her heart, the knowledge that her children would not go hungry, made the uncertainty bearable. The day passed slowly, filled with small tasks and quiet observations. Martha watched as Charles moved through the ranch with purpose and skill, giving orders to his workers and tending to the needs of the estate. She noticed the care he took in overseeing everything, the fairness with which he treated his employees, and the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. It was clear that he was a man who had faced his own challenges, who had built his life with effort and determination. Yet despite his strength and authority, he had offered kindness without hesitation, a kindness that Martha could hardly comprehend. By evening, Martha knew she had to make a decision. She could accept Charles's offer and begin a new life on the ranch, or she could return to the cold, empty cabin and continue struggling to survive the winter alone. The thought of going back was unbearable. She looked at her children, their small faces peaceful as they slept under the warm blankets, and her heart ached at the idea of leaving them behind. She realized that accepting his offer was not only an act of survival, but an act of love, the ultimate protection she could give them. With a deep breath, she approached Charles, who was standing near the fire, his expression calm and expectant. "Sir," she began softly, I will accept your offer. I will stay here, and I will care for my children as best I can. I am grateful beyond words for what you have done, and I promise to do my best to honor your kindness." Charles nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "Then it is settled," he said simply. "You and your children will be part of this household. We will face the winter together, and we will make sure that you are safe and cared for. That is all I ask, that you continue to do your best as a mother and caretaker. Everything else will fall into place." Martha felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and cautious hope. She knew that challenges lay ahead, that adapting to life on the ranch would not be easy, and that the winter was far from over. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of possibility. She and her children could survive this winter and perhaps even thrive under the care of Charles and the stability of the ranch. As the night settled over the prairie, Martha tucked her children into bed once more, whispering words of comfort and love. She felt a quiet determination growing within her, a promise to herself and to her children that she would make this opportunity count. The kindness of one man had changed their lives, but it was her strength, courage, and love that would determine their future. And as the fire crackled and the wind howled outside, Martha allowed herself to dream of warmth, of safety, and of a life where her children could grow and flourish. The offer that had seemed impossible was now real, and with it came hope, courage, and the possibility of a future filled with care, love, and stability. The first days on the ranch were a whirlwind for Martha and her children. Everything was new, the smells of hay and livestock, the vast fields stretching beyond what the eye could see, the sound of horses' hooves against the barn floor, and the bustle of workers moving with purpose. Martha's heart raced with a mixture of awe and nervousness. The ranch was unlike anything she had ever known. She had lived a simple life before, struggling with the harsh prairie, but here every corner of the ranch told a story of hard work, planning, and care. Charles Whitmore had arranged for the children to have a small room near hers, simple but warm, with beds that were soft and blankets that smelled faintly of lavender. For Samuel, Anna, and little Emily, it was a dream come true. They spent the first morning exploring their new surroundings, their eyes wide with wonder at the barns full of animals, the fields of hay, and the large kitchen where Mrs. Harper prepared food that seemed endless. Their laughter, once rare and timid, now rang through the hallways of the ranch like music, bringing warmth even to the coldest corners. Martha watched them carefully, noting the joy in their movements, but also the hesitation. Life here would not be easy. There were chores to do, rules to follow, and work to learn. But she also noticed something new, a spark of confidence in their eyes, a curiosity about the world that had been dulled by hunger and hardship. She felt hope swell in her chest, a fragile but powerful thing that gave her strength to face the challenges ahead. Charles observed Martha and the children quietly, his sharp eyes noticing every detail. He admired her resilience, the careful way she guided her children through new experiences, and the patience she showed in teaching them. He realized that her strength extended beyond mere survival. It was a quiet, steady strength that would allow her and her children to thrive even in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. He also recognized that she was learning quickly, adapting to a life she had never known, and he felt a growing respect for her courage. The first tasks on the ranch were simple, yet unfamiliar. Martha learned to feed the chickens, carry buckets of water from the well, and help Mrs. Harper in the kitchen. Samuel was assigned small jobs with the animals, under the careful supervision of one of the ranch hands, while Anna helped with gathering firewood and tending to the small vegetable garden near the house. Emily, being the youngest, spent most of her time close to Martha, learning by watching and mimicking her movements. Each day brought new lessons, new skills, and new challenges, but also small triumphs that filled Martha with quiet pride. At first the children were timid. Samuel was cautious around the horses, afraid of their size and strength, while Anna hesitated to climb the ladders leading to the hayloft. Emily cried easily when she was tired or overwhelmed. But Martha was patient. She encouraged them gently, praising their efforts and celebrating their small victories. Slowly the children began to gain confidence. Samuel learned to lead a horse without fear. Anna climbed the hayloft with steady determination, and Emily began to walk confidently across the yard, her small hands holding tightly to her mother's. Martha herself faced challenges she had never imagined. The physical work was exhausting, far beyond the chores she had known in her own prairie cabin. Carrying buckets of water, lifting hay bales, tending to animals, and keeping the children safe while doing all this required strength, patience, and endurance. Her muscles ached, and her hands were often raw from work. Yet she never complained, knowing that every effort she made was for the well-being of her children. She found a rhythm to the work, a flow, that made even the hardest tasks feel purposeful. As the days passed, Martha began to see the subtler lessons of ranch life. She learned how to anticipate the needs of the animals, how to recognize signs of illness, and how to balance work with care. She watched Charles in his routines, noting his careful planning, his fairness with the workers, and the calm authority with which he managed the ranch. She realized that strength came not only from physical power, but from patience, observation, and understanding. She began to apply these lessons herself, guiding her children and organizing her work with newfound skill. The children's confidence grew as well. Samuel became skilled at caring for the horses, learning which ones were gentle and which required caution. He learned to groom them, feed them, and even lead them across the fields without fear. Anna discovered a love for the garden, marveling at the growth of vegetables and flowers under her care. Emily, though small, learned to help with simple chores, carrying small baskets and helping Mrs. Harper in the kitchen. Each child found a place in this new world, a sense of purpose and pride that had been missing in their lives. Evenings were quiet and filled with small joys. Martha would sit by the fire with her children, telling them stories of the prairie and listening to them recount their day's adventures. Charles sometimes joined them, offering advice or simply listening. There was no need for grand words or declarations. The simple act of sharing the day, of being together, created a bond that was growing stronger with each passing moment. Martha began to feel a sense of family forming, a connection that went beyond survival. It was something deeper, rooted in trust, care, and shared experience. Despite the challenges, Martha also found moments of laughter and play. On snowy afternoons, she and the children would build small snowmen, race across the fields, or slide down gentle hills. These moments were precious, fleeting, but they filled her heart with joy. The children's laughter echoed through the ranch, a sound that warmed even the coldest corners. Martha realized that joy could exist even in hardship, that happiness was not only about comfort, but about connection, love, and the small victories of everyday life. Charles watched these moments with quiet satisfaction. He had offered help to a desperate family, but he had not expected the bonds that would form, the courage that Martha would show, or the joy that could be found even in hardship. He began to see her not just as a woman in need, but as a partner in the life of the ranch, someone whose strength, love, and intelligence could contribute to the well-being of the household. He felt a growing respect and a quiet admiration that he had not anticipated. Martha's days became a rhythm of work and care, learning and teaching, patience and joy. She faced every challenge with determination, guided her children with love, and began to see the fruits of her labor in their growth and happiness. Samuel's laughter as he led the horses, Anna's pride in the thriving garden, and Emily's confident steps across the yard became symbols of hope and resilience. Martha knew that the journey was far from over, that winter still held dangers, and that challenges would continue to come. But for the first time, she felt a sense of possibility, that through hard work, love, and support, they could survive and even thrive. As the sun set over the snow-covered fields, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink, Martha stood at the edge of the yard, watching her children play and Charles tending to the barn. She felt a quiet gratitude for the kindness that had brought them here, for the opportunity to start anew, and for the strength she had discovered within herself. She realized that life on the ranch was more than survival. It was growth, learning, and the creation of a family bound not only by blood but by love, courage, and shared experience. And as the first stars appeared in the winter sky, Martha knew that they had found something rare and precious, a place of safety, love, and hope. The hardships of the past were not forgotten, but they had been transformed by resilience and care into lessons that would guide them forward. She held her children close, feeling the warmth of their small bodies and the love that flowed between them, and she whispered a silent promise. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with courage, patience, and the unbreakable bond of family. Winter had begun to soften, and the long days on the ranch had slowly transformed into a rhythm that Martha and her children could call their own. The snow was melting in patches, revealing the brown and green of early spring beneath, and the prairie began to hum with the faint promise of new life. The children had grown stronger, healthier, and more confident with each passing day. Samuel's hands, once small and weak, were now sure and steady as he led the horses across the field. Anna's small fingers were nimble and careful in the garden, guiding tender plants toward the sunlight. Even little Emily, once shy and fearful, now ran with laughter across the yard, her small feet kicking up the last patches of snow. Martha watched them from the porch of the ranch house, her heart swelling with pride and love. Life had not become easy, but it had become richer. The chores were still hard, the work demanding, yet every day was balanced with moments of laughter and joy. Martha had learned the patterns of the ranch, when to feed the animals, how to mend fences, and even how to anticipate the needs of the land itself. She had grown in ways she had never imagined possible. Charles watched her quietly, noting her strength and her gentle guidance of the children. He saw the resilience in her eyes, the way she adapted and thrived, and he realized that her presence had changed the ranch as much as the ranch had changed them. The bond between Martha and Charles had grown, not through words alone, but through shared work, shared responsibility, and a quiet understanding that neither had to explain themselves to the other. Charles had learned to admire her patience, her wisdom, and the courage she displayed in raising her children under difficult circumstances. Martha in turn saw a man of integrity, strength, and fairness, someone who had faced his own challenges and had chosen to offer kindness when it mattered most. Slowly, respect grew into warmth, and warmth into a subtle, quiet affection. It was a love that did not need to be rushed or spoken aloud, but one that was felt in shared glances, in thoughtful gestures, and in the safety and comfort they had created together for the children. The children, sensing the calm and security around them, began to thrive emotionally as well. Samuel, once timid and cautious, now carried himself with confidence, learning not just the practical skills of ranch life but also the value of responsibility. Anna's laughter became more frequent, her curiosity about the world growing daily. Emily's trust in her mother and into the household allowed her to explore without fear, running between rooms and fields with an excitement that was contagious. Martha watched them, amazed at how quickly the children had adapted, and grateful for the nurturing environment Charles had provided. Even the ranch hands noticed the change. They spoke in quiet admiration of Martha's abilities, the children's improvements, and the overall sense of warmth that now filled the ranch. It was a place that had once been cold and structured, focused solely on work and efficiency, but now it had grown into a home shaped not by wealth alone, but by love, care, and shared responsibility. As the days passed, Martha found herself learning new lessons about resilience, trust, and community. She understood that a family was not just about blood, but about those who cared for one another, who shared burdens and joys alike. She saw that love could grow in unexpected places, that kindness could transform lives, and that even in the harshest of circumstances, there was room for hope. She had given everything she could to her children, and now, with Charles's help, she was discovering the possibility of giving them more than mere survival, a life full of opportunity, care, and warmth. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink, Martha and Charles walked across the fields together. Samuel was leading a horse nearby, Anna was tending to the garden, and Emily followed them, collecting small wildflowers in her tiny hands. The scene was peaceful, almost idyllic, a portrait of life that was hard-earned and precious. Martha spoke softly, her words carrying over the quiet sounds of the ranch. "I never imagined life could be like this," she admitted. "I thought we would always be struggling, always walking through snow and hunger. But now, I feel like there is a future for us, one where my children can grow strong and safe." Charles nodded, his gaze steady. "You have made that future possible, Martha. Your courage, your love for them, your strength, it brought you here. I merely offered the chance. You took it, and you have turned it into something wonderful." His words carried a sincerity that touched Martha deeply. She realized that the respect and affection between them was more than just gratitude. It was recognition of her worth, her strength, and her unwavering love for her children. Evenings at the ranch had taken on a rhythm of comfort and warmth. Martha and Charles often sat together by the fire after the children were asleep, talking quietly about the day, planning for the next, and sharing small moments of reflection. There was no need for grand declarations. The quiet companionship was enough. The children's laughter echoed faintly from the bedrooms, a reminder of the life they had managed to build together. Martha would watch Charles, noticing the way he moved with calm authority, the gentle attention he gave to details, and the kindness he showed not just to her, but to the children and the workers alike. It was a kind of love that was patient, steady, and reliable, a foundation upon which a family could truly grow. As spring progressed, Martha saw more changes in herself and her children. Samuel began teaching Emily small tasks, helping her carry water or feed the chickens. Anna assisted him, guiding her younger sister with care. Martha watched, filled with pride at their growth, realizing that the lessons of responsibility, patience, and teamwork were taking root. Even Charles occasionally stepped back, allowing Martha to guide the children, knowing that her influence and love were the foundation of their development. The ranch, too, seemed transformed. It had always been productive and organized, but now it felt alive with joy, connection, and a sense of belonging. The workers were inspired by the harmony between Martha, Charles, and the children, and the entire household functioned not just as a workplace, but as a home filled with care. Martha understood that this transformation had not been simple. It was built through consistent effort, patience, and love. But seeing it flourish before her eyes filled her heart with hope and gratitude. One afternoon, while walking through the fields with Charles, Martha paused to watch the children play near a small pond. Samuel skipped stones, Anna chased Emily as she laughed, and the sunlight glinted off the water, creating patterns that danced across the grass. Martha felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that the struggles they had endured, the cold, the hunger, the fear, had not been in vain. They had brought them here, to a place of safety, growth, and possibility. And in that moment, she knew that her family was complete, not just in numbers, but in love and shared experience. Martha and Charles often reflected on how far they had come. They spoke quietly about their hopes for the future, for the children to grow educated, strong, and kind, for the ranch to continue thriving, and for the bonds they had formed to endure through any hardship. These conversations were not hurried or forced. They were calm and thoughtful, built on mutual respect, shared experience, and a recognition that family was created through care, effort, and love, not merely circumstance. The days grew longer, and the winter snow melted entirely, revealing the full beauty of the prairie. Flowers began to bloom, birds returned to sing, and the warmth of the sun encouraged growth in every corner of the ranch. Martha walked among the fields with her children, teaching them to tend the garden, gather herbs, and care for the animals. Each day was a lesson in responsibility, patience, and the rewards of hard work. The children thrived under her guidance, their confidence and joy evident in every step. Charles observed these moments with quiet pride. He had offered them shelter, but he had not anticipated the depth of connection that would form. He admired Martha's ability to nurture, teach, and guide, and he saw in her a partner not only in raising the children, but in sustaining the ranch and creating a home filled with love. The respect between them had deepened into trust, and trust had grown into a quiet, enduring affection. By summer, the family had settled fully into life on the ranch. The children were healthy, strong, and happy. Martha had gained skills she never imagined, and her confidence in her abilities had grown. Charles had come to see her not just as a caretaker, but as the heart of their home. And though life would always bring challenges, they had built a foundation of love, trust, and resilience that could carry them through any storm. Martha often reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The cold winter, the long walks through snow, the fear and desperation she had felt when she first knocked on Charles's door. Those moments of hardship had been transformed by courage, kindness, and love into something lasting. She had discovered that strength was not just surviving, but growing, learning, and building bonds that could endure. And as she looked at her children playing in the sun, she realized that the generosity of one man had given them more than survival. It had given them a home, a family, and a future full of hope. In the quiet of the evening, as Martha tucked her children into bed and watched Charles close the door behind them, she felt a profound sense of peace. They had come so far, endured so much, and now, together, they had something enduring. A family bound not by circumstance alone, but by love, respect, and shared experience. And in that love, they found the strength to face the future, knowing that no matter what hardships might come, they would face them together, united, and stronger for it.